Gran Turismo, legendary racing series that brought my absolute love for cars for the rest of my life. Me and my dad got so influenced by GT5 we actually bought a steering wheel so we could compete against one another. They were really good times. But what exactly made this series stand over other racing games like Need for Speed or Test Drive Unlimited, even if it's just PlayStation exclusive? Well, I will try to summarize here the best parts from the whole franchise, and after that we're gonna make conclusion. So yeah, let's find out. In 1997, not very well unknown developer Yasunori Kamauchi with Polyphony Digital released small racing games on PlayStation 1 called Gran Turismo. Game that promised realistic driving model for its era, fun races against AI and big variety of different cars and racetracks. It didn't take long and the first Gran Turismo became not just one of the most selling racing games of its era, but with more than 10 millions of sold copies it became one of the most selling games on PlayStation 1. And I understand we can laugh to this game these days, but with its realistic driving model it wasn't just Need for Speed or Test Drive Unlimited. Even with controller, you could feel when the tires were losing traction, you couldn't just brake into a corner and steer in the same time because you will have to deal with understeer. Some cars were lighter and heavier, so you had to brake earlier or later. Some cars were front wheel drive, rear wheel drive or all wheel drive, and you had to have different driving style for each so you wouldn't stop in a tree. This game also featured tuning that obviously changed the behavior of your cars, and you could tune your engine, have different tires, different exhaust, stripped out the weight and a lot more. All of that meant that driving model was fun and it just felt it had more love from developers than other racing games. But GT1 didn't just focus on racing cars. With its big variety of 140 different cars, you could drive your mom's Honda Civic or in racetrack, or you could take legendary Nissan R32 or Mitsubishi GTO and race against one another. This was really revolutionary, because racing games these days were focusing most on racing cars or supercars at least, and that led developers to make license challenges that were still pretty basic here, but they've got improvements in later series. But here you have a game that lets you do race in normal sports cars. Most of them were obviously from Japan, but people around the world loved it. It's safe to say that the GT1 peak is also responsible and has probable evidence why some JDM cars from this series became so expensive in short period. Worth mentioning is also the fact that Polyphony Digital made all 11 racetracks themselves. They were fully fictional and most of them became so legendary they used them through the whole series. Every fan will remember names like Trial Mountain, Deep Forest Raceway, Autumn Ring, Special Route 5 and I could continue. After big success of GT1, in 1999 Polyphony Digital released continuing with its second game. Basically GT2 was about taking the original game and making improvements everywhere. More detailed driving model, more cars and tracks with its big news of rallying added to this game, better crowd sounds, larger tuning, better graphics, more lights and missions, and overall the whole game just felt more alive. With its reworked menu and UI it get the more typical look that became recognizable in later games. The first game was revolutionary, no doubt about that, but the second part added so much content and things to do I would definitely prefer the GT2 to play today. But it's fair to say that the GT2 was just evolution of something that already existed. But then GT3 came and oh my god. I can't even imagine what people had to think when they first saw this game in comparison of the previous one, because if you're old enough and you're watching this video, please let me know how you felt in the comments, because the graphic transition between these two games is incredible. Anyway, Gran Turismo 3, less cars, from 600 to 180, it looks bad on paper, but with its reworked driving model and graphic improvement, I believe people back in the days just forgave. GT3 for me is the game that defined identity for later games. Very recognizable city menu and UI with its soundtrack is legendary. I will try to stay neutral here because GT3 is the first GT that I played with my dad on PS2 and we're both loving it. Nostalgic aside, but man, it was good. Even there was less cars and less tracks, we get more championships and races to compete, more license challenges, reworked AI that actually feels more aggressive than the previous game. You also had to care more about your tires because tires were more realistic and they did wear out. You had to go for pit stops in longer races and you had to tune your cars in some cases if you wanted to stay fast. The whole credit balance and the system of paying cars is well made and I could continue. Thing that I would criticize is AI, because the races were sometimes too easy without proper challenge, and they already had 2 games to make it challenging, but it sometimes doesn't do anything. But why I love this game the most is not because of the actual gameplay, but it's because of something else. Something else that I want to say in the end of this video. And we finally go to the GT4, and this one is considered by a lot of people as a peak of the whole series, and I absolutely understand why. It a little bit came back where the GT2 ended, because now we have again a lot of different cars and race tracks, finally including a lot of real-life race tracks, like the legendary Nordschleife, a lot of license hardcore challenges, career, championships, events, another steps in graphics, and overall the game in this point is so big and there's so much to say, it's better to say the differences between GT3 and GT4. Driving model feels more realistic, as the whole game feels like it wanted to be more on the simulator side than arcade-ish. AI is definitely more tough and hard, which GT3 absolutely needed. You had a chance to be a manager of your driver, which I don't think someone actually cared about, but anyway, GT4 also added different weather, different surfaces, and I could continue. It feels like more grown-up GT3, but honestly, I was disappointed by new main menu and UI because it's a little bit boring compared to what he had before that. I would also say the soundtrack was worse than its predecessors, but maybe you have a different opinion. This game came in an era where racing games started to actually make a proper engine noise, but GT4 sounds pretty much the same as GT3 did, so there's maybe a little bit disappointment, but I think it's still a very good game objectively. And now we are making a huge step to 2010 with GT5, and you could really feel the step in every way. GT5 is so huge game, I would be here 5 hours before I would say anything. Better AI, driving model, more cars and tracks, challenges, events and pretty much everything. We have now dynamic weather and finally online racing. Well, it didn't work very well, but it was the first step to the future of Gran Turismo. GT6 was released 3 years after GT5 and it was just an evolution. More of everything, including new tracks, editor, controversial microtransactions and more realism to everything. This game just feels big DLC to GT5, so I'm not gonna spend the time here for saying everything again, but you get the point. And now we come for, I would say, the modern Gran Turismo games. Gran Turismo Sport is, with its big lead, the most controversial Gran Turismo. With its lack of content in single player mode, it's a big shame, but it had rework online that was fun when it worked, and yes, I'm looking at you Polyphony, why couldn't we join with friends on the same session for a year? Anyway, and again, step up in everything else, and you know, you can't compare new technologies with the older ones because driving model here is the most realistic ever, engine sounds hugely improved, and everything was built for a big online mode. People are already saying this was the worst GT ever, and I understand why, but GT Sports never wanted to be in single player mode, and probably that's why it didn't get the typical number like the other ones. I had a lot of fun in multiplayer because the game did have the great balance of making good steering on controller, that when you played against players with steering wheels, you still had a chance to put decent laps. You could also play this game for the first time in VR, so if you had the money, you could really step up with immersion. Overall, it never was a bad game for me, and it's good it didn't get the number of GT7. Because GT7 arrived couple of years later. This game promised back to basic content with huge single player mode, and it delivered. You have once again a lot of different challenges, races, championships, tuning, everything you had in older games, but GT7 adds maintenance of your car if you want. You have to change oil, tires, rebuild the engine if necessary, and it really gets you closer to a real performance car ownership. You have off-brand market where you can purchase older cars that you can buy from a dealership. Because GT Sports don't have these single player features, you have to compare GT7 to GT6, and there's a huge step in technology. It feels much more realistic and alive, which is pretty much everything we want. Again, GT7 features microtransactions that can create pay-to-win races, but if you have to turn on the balance of performance, which is must-have for online races, I never saw this as a big problem. Problem I have with this game is lame AI. It behaves the same as it did from GT5 and it doesn't add any big challenge in races, which is big shame. GT7 is already working with new Sophia AI, but it should be ready from GT Sport. Overall, great game again, feels fun to play, and if you want, you can play it on PSVR too. Reason why I'm doing this video is not because of making an entire review of every game called Gran Turismo. I would spend so much time here to list every new features and change, and you'll already have so many videos on the internet of that, so it would be pointless. Do you know what intro played in the beginning of this video? It was Gran Turismo 3. It is my most favorite intro from this series because it catches up the whole process of combustions in the engines and making it to the racing track. Gran Turismo 4 have this beautiful view on the 4GT with its classical music that catches its artistic style. Gran Turismo 5 intro have the entire process of making a car from scratch and making it into the production. Gran Turismo 6 have driving every different car, driving anywhere including the moon. With each part, developers are not focusing with this intro on racing itself, because Gran Turismo is a great celebration of the automotive industry. In this series, it doesn't matter if you're driving your dad's Peugeot 206 or a Nissan GTR or Formula race car, because you can drive anything and every car can bring enjoy to its owner. This series made driving small underperformance hatchback actually fun, and it teaches you how to drive a car like this on the limit. In every game there's so much car industry lore that you could make 10 documents out of it, and Gran Turismo isn't just a racing game, it literally teaches millions of people to develop their love for cars. I feel like the two last GT games are maybe too much for a casual non-car person with its advanced driving model, maybe it gets too much realistic for what Gran Turismo should be, and I agree. Even I still don't think that GT Sport or GT7 are simulators, they still have some way to games like Assetto Corsa or iRacing, but these two last games really convinced me that maybe Gran Turismo don't have to attempt to be realistic as possible. Maybe it was alright with its physics in GT3 to GT6 era, or maybe people have more steering wheels these days and so they can enjoy the realism more. I don't really know, and with its car industry changing more to its electrifications, I'm not sure if they could grow another Gran Turismo that would give the same vibes as the old ones did. Let me know your opinion in the comments and I will see you in the next video. Bye.